Hi there. I hope you're having a nice time today. You're listening to the Everglade Chronicles, a reading. I'm Garrett Shabe, the author. Today I'll be reading Chapter 9, Part 1, What Happens Next. This is another supersized chapter, so it will be broken into two parts. It's hard to believe we are almost finished the first novel. Thank you so much for listening. After a harsh loss, Jessica and company are preparing for the ultimate showdown. Now let's get started. My sister and her army friends spent the evenings gloating about their victory. Many children kept asking when things would return to normal, but Hudson had no news for them. Each day these loser commoners come and beg me for answers, he growled, gripping the arms of his chair. It was Tuesday night, and I was standing pointedly next to the old wicker throne. I keep telling them I have no answers to give, but that doesn't seem to stop them. We are all curious, my lord, I said quietly. Since the war has been won, the children are naturally curious about what comes next. Well, allow them to be curious some more. I am curious too. Security passes were still being checked at both bridges, and things were still tight. Military operations were still being carried out, even in the remote areas. A high military presence lingered like flies over a carcass. Madison, the foreman of the farmers, approached the throne. My lord, she bowed deeply. What more do you people want? The Duke angrily asked. Nothing in that regard, she replied. I do, however, have some bad news. Hudson nodded after a moment of silence, so Madison continued. Because of our leave from the fields, the harvest will be late. We barely had 10 kids working in the fields when most of us went off to war, my lord. I do apologize. Madison was not a farmer, but she had farmer blood. The former Duke had appointed her as a supervisor of the farms to ensure their smooth productivity. Her elder brother had been a farmer in the meadow before he grew too old for the game. I looked over at the Duke, expecting him to lash out like a viper. Instead, he simply nodded. That is understandable, he remarked. I appreciate the news. Madison bowed and left immediately, without remarking another thought. The Duke had displayed some odd humanity. When she had left, Hudson sighed deeply. I suppose I should be off for the night, he grumbled, making his way for the path. I'll go and collect my sister then, I mumbled. Hudson didn't reply. He carried on walking. I strolled along the old path to the royal city, shielding my eyes from the lowering sun. The setting blaze cast an orange and yellow glow upon the land. While the sun was in the other direction, I couldn't help but shade my eyes. Still boasting, I see, I said, approaching the ministry. Abby nodded, smiling at me. They had chips, candy, and soda pop thrown astray among the Jungle Gym bars in their base. It seemed as if they were enjoying their victory too much. You know, in this high society, only those who make the actual decisions will get the praise, I reminded her, folding my arms behind my back. But we are colonels and generals, Ryan said rather rudely. We did make the decisions. I feel as if the praise will fall directly to Lord Schuyler, I replied. He is praising us, a teen I did not know remarked. Look at this plunder, a plunder of chips and pop, all for us. There was candy, but we ate it all. I smiled faintly. Let us go home then, sister. Our time has come. Abby was reluctant to leave, but our parents would have wanted us home sooner. She bid farewell to her friends, and we began the steady trek home. Why must you rain on our parade? She asked. I was merely retaining my status, I replied easily. It might have been rude, but Venus would have expected it. The military is not part of the upper class. I am barely part of it myself. I must invoke the attitude of the gentry. Lord Schuyler hopes to promote us to such high classes, she gloated. How so? I asked, incredibly interested. He does not have royal authority. He has spoken to the Queen, and she believes we colonels and generals must be given honors. A simple badge, I laughed. A simple badge does not make you a lord. But it does make us sirs and dames. Excuse me? I stopped on the bridge. What? Knighting, she said simply. You should know the term, Jessica. You spend so much time reading history books. The Queen is knighting us. I am to be Dame Abigail. That doesn't sound like Venus, I said, shocked. The Queen only favors those of royal blood. How did this come to pass? It is, my dear sister, really quite simple, Abby said. Times are changing, and if she wishes to retain a loyal and popular audience, she must reach past her old thoughts and embrace the future. Inherited gentry and titles are a thing of the past. Look at Tyler. He was a lowly soldier one moment, and the next a duke. Everyone is coming into honors now. This makes for an interesting concept, I admitted. Throughout my history, Queen Venus has only promoted those of royal blood, me included. Her inner circle of aristocracy is expanding. It is, Abby said, beginning to walk again. You bet it is. As we stalked the birch trail in silence, I heard a bush rustle. You go on ahead, I told my sister. I have to tie my shoes. You're wearing flats, Jess, she observed. I'll see you at home, I replied. Abigail shrugged and continued her walk. I waited till she had rounded the corner before moving towards the shrubs. Lo and behold, Sassy Cassie was sitting in it. What are you doing? I asked her. Sitting, she said blatantly. But why? Cassidy laughed and rose from her bush, dusting off the leaves. A little bird told me just now that the Queen is bestowing honors on her top military gents and ladies, she said, sighing. Whatever happened to landing a spot because of your royal blood? My sister already told me all about it, I remarked, reciting what Abby had informed me of literally seconds prior. Cassidy was as keen as I had been to hear the news, and she seemed as puzzled by it all as myself. I feel like something is up with the Queen, she admitted, but everything is always up with her. Her guard is never down. Speaking of which, I've noticed the meadow is still pondering the idea of war. It would appear as such because the military is still very active. I agree, I folded my arms. This isn't good. She already has us under her command with her weird, super-controlling security laws. What more could she want? She is slowly making her way to absolute power, that's for sure. Cassidy thought for a second, and then her face lit up at the prospect of an idea. I've got it, she said loudly. The only reason she is doing this honors thing and the knighting business is because she fears her ratings are low. What more to boost your image than to appeal to those who have put their lives on the line? I nodded intently. Queen Venus did have very low approval ratings, especially since her declaration of war and her two-arms call. This was an appeal to the public for more support. This could be the opportunity we've been waiting for, I felt myself say. What do you mean? I was taken aback. Oh, what? Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Let's roll with it. Sassy Cassie grinned. You're very right in this matter, Jessica. Now is the time to strike. Say, you wouldn't happen to be friends with Isis, would you? I feel like she is very interested in a revolution. I'm afraid I don't know her, I said. A revolution sounds risky, but now could be the time. Since the Queen is preoccupied with realigning the aristocracy and boosting her public image, that would give us ample time to round up an army or two. However, the military is right in our face. I've been recruiting for seasons, Cassidy laughed. I have this under control. I already have a network of capable spies. Some are kids you don't even know. I have spies in all positions of government, including the military. It's really only a matter of time before Venus falls. Perhaps we should get planning, I said. Venus and her reign of terror must end. Hi there, it's the author here. I'm just going to interrupt for a brief moment to talk about a segment I'd like to call Ask the Author. Do you have some burning questions about the book or the author that you want answered? In a few weeks, I will be hosting an Ask the Author mini-episode of the podcast, where I will do my best to answer questions that you've submitted. Stay tuned for more details soon on where to send your questions. Take care for now. Let's get back to the novel. Caitlin Hardy was all smiles come Friday evening, dressed in a pink polka dot dress. She was waving to the citizens who had gathered for the mandatory meeting in the royal city. While the rest of us wore glum looks and disinterested faces, Venus could not have looked happier and prouder. The colonels and a few generals were lined up near the hill to Queen's Summit, awaiting their knighthood. My sister looked especially proud, for her face was gleaming with a grin. Her famed pink ribbons graced her hair once more. I looked around. I could not find Cassidy's face amongst the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. Your queen appreciates it," Venus said with a gleeful grin. "We are all gathered here today to witness the triumph and the appreciation of those who defended our nation and fought bravely. We are also here to witness the crowning of our Lord Ashton as Duke of the Lost Forest." The queen began to clap, and the rest of us children were obligated to clap as well. I was standing near the front of the crowd, as it befitted my status. Cora Hastings was standing near me, but not directly beside me. I saw her sigh out of the corner of my eye. The aristocracy was a few feet ahead, off to the side in a small group. Lord Schuyler unsheathed his plastic sword and handed it to Venus so that she might knight the generals. "I declare all of you sirs and dames of this realm," she giggled. They each knelt, and she touched the plastic sword on each shoulder before asking them to rise. "Arise, Dame Abigail Walker," she said when she reached my sister. She handed the sword back to Lord Schuyler and then strolled over to where Lord Ashton was seated. He had been given a lawn chair to sit on, and the Queen's butler was standing near him, as if to attend him if he needed anything. "By Her Majesty's royal command, I hereby proclaim Lord Ashton Smith as our new Lord and Saviour of the Lost Forest. Let him reign long and be prosperous. Arise, Your Grace, the Duke of the Lost Forest." Ashton could not have looked happier, for he was beaming intently. Barely anyone in the crowd clapped since mostly everyone hated him. I looked over at Schuyler, who wore a troubled and angry look. I could tell he was not pleased in the slightest. "Here is a bit of a surprise," the Queen said unceremoniously. "I wish to proclaim my good friend and right-hand man, Lord Schuyler, as the first Baron Marnier." Schuyler was taken aback. "Thank you, Your Royal Majesty." He sunk to the grass in a bow. "Marnier?" Lady Chloe asked loudly. "Where did that come from?" "I like the name, all right. I took it from a bottle in my father's liquor cabinet," Venus growled. "Hear, hear for the new Baron," Ryan called out to break the awkward silence. A small part of the crowd kept yelling, "Hear, hear," until Lord Schuyler had to tell them to stop. Queen Venus dismissed us, and we could all resume our nightly duties. "All that fuss and me leaving with nothing?" Hudson hissed. "I worked my butt off for Her Majesty, and I received nothing at all? Ashton became a duke, Schuyler a baron, and your sister a dame. What about me?" "The others received nothing, my lord. Do not take it personally." Hudson was too enraged to calm down. "The others are nothing but fools. I should at least have a bit of land. A knighthood, even. Shall I speak with Lord Kevin about the matter? He is in charge of all land holdings and such." "Yes," he said simply, "and report back to me immediately." It was not hard to secure an audience with Lord Kevin. He certainly wasn't a smart lad. While the Queen trusted him with the running of her entire estate, Kevin was far from an intelligent steward. He was rather bland-looking, with black-rimmed glasses and plain brown hair. His figure, however, was slight of build. "What might I do for you, Mistress Walker?" he asked. I found him sitting with Lady Chloe near the tire swing, chatting about nothing really. They seemed to be inseparable. Cora was standing near them, still as a statue. "My Lord Hudson, the Duke, is a bit, shall we say, annoyed that he received nothing for his part in the war effort. While it is not very refined to ask for such things, he insisted I come to you," I said, trying to arrange my words properly. "Her Majesty said nothing to me about your lord," he replied aimlessly. "While his grace is a valuable member of this kingdom, I cannot say the Queen wishes to bestow him with any honor whatsoever. She did not approach me with regards to him giving land, either." "Any particular reason, my lord?" I pondered further. "His Grace has, in my own opinion, aided the Queen without end most recently. Surely he is due for something?" "I shall speak to Her Majesty regarding this matter, Mistress Walker, but for the time being there is nothing for him." I nodded. "Thank you very much, sire." I swept him a curtsy and made for the paved path. "Might I have a word, Mistress Walker?" Cora asked, approaching out of nowhere. "Of course," I said simply. When we had reached the path, Cora dropped the formal act. "Cassidy told me you're on board for a mutiny. Yes, I replied. You bet I am. I cannot stand this any longer. I cannot believe Hudson has the audacity to demand a reward from the Queen. That will only affect her reputation further, Cora sighed, which is good for us, but not good for our masters. Both those yahoos behind me have been talking about the Queen's reputation since the meeting. What have they been saying? My interest was piqued. This and that, she said in a whisper. Mostly just nonsense about how they hate Ashton for receiving the duchy, but more so about how they have figured out the Queen is using the knighthoods to boost her own morale and her own opinion amongst the commons. They appear to be a little worried for their positions. Anything interesting come up? Hardly, she admitted. When those two talk, it's like beating two dull rocks together. I chuckled. Let me know if anything is said. Of course, Cora nodded. She slipped back to her master, and I began walking to the village. The Duke was not impressed with what I had to say. Kevin is below me, he nearly snarled. Below me! How dare he say such things? He is only reciting what the Queen told him, I said. We shall see about that, he growled. If she does indeed have nothing for my efforts, then she shall see the wrath of her own work. When there is trouble, the Duke of Sunset will not come running. I secretly smiled. If Venus was under attack from a revolution, I theorized Hudson would stay out of it and protect himself. That could very well be the victory we had been waiting for. Anything else, my lord? I asked. No, he sighed. Nothing at the moment. I bowed deeply and slunk off into the meadow. I watched a few children frolic in the field and did not feel the approach of Ben. Howdy, he said smoothly. How was the meeting? How come you weren't there? I asked. I had a doctor's appointment, he grinned. I'm sure I did not miss much. Hudson is furious, I told him. Schuyler is a baron, and Ashton is a duke. So the poor Duke of Sunset didn't get his dessert, Ben remarked. We both began watching the group of children play in the meadow, as if we were observant parents. No, he did not, and he is very mad. Anything else? Well, I spoke with Lord Kevin, and he said the Queen has no desire to give Hudson anything. Other than that, just a bit of gossip about how the Queen's public opinion is very low. At an all-time low, I'm afraid, Ben said. I was speaking to someone on the bridge, and he heard from the Queen's butler that her reputation is very poor. She is trying her best to try and figure it out, but all the signs are there. Disheveled children make for poor, loyal people, I said. Our way of life has changed, and a boy she put into power has been reduced to rubble. The children do not forget such things, and such actions have only angered the Lost Forest even more. I fear this war is not over yet, Ben sighed deeply. I thought for a moment, and then decided to act towards fate. Are you aware of what Cassidy is planning? Cassidy and her spies? He asked, turning towards me. I don't take Sassy Cassie for more than she's worth, and that's just a silly girl. What could she be planning? A revolution, I said sternly. Benjamin had been an easy win. He had been brought low by the Duke, and his entire way of life had been changed and altered by recent events. It made perfect sense for him to come aboard and join our revolution. I was certain most of the children in the village would follow when the time came, but those in the royal city favored the Queen. We needed to expose her and get them to join our movement. On Saturday evening, I returned to the meadow as Isis. I had left a note for Cassidy to meet me in the Lost Forest, where Tyler and Mark would be as well. Benjamin was coming too. It was a risky meeting, but it needed to be done. When I arrived at the dimly lit jungle gym, they were already there. All of them were standing near the rock-climbing wall the two girls had hid behind with their water balloons. There was a solitary streetlight that gave a dim light to the area. I noticed Cassidy, Cora, and Benjamin standing nearby. Tyler, Mark, and Matthew were chatting a ways away. I took a deep breath and stepped into the light. We've come, Cassidy said. What do you desire, Isis? I am here to join your crusade, I said simply. You're the hero of the meadow, Tyler remarked. We would be happy to have you join us. Agreed, Cassidy said. The only person we are missing is Jessica. I could feel it in my gut, the feeling to reveal myself. Isis had to be unmasked, for the charade could go on no longer. I reached up to untie my mask, and when it fell, everyone gasped. That concludes Chapter 9, Part 1, our readings for this week. Join me next week when we conclude this supersized chapter, Chapter 9. Have a great week! Shimmer by Captures provides the music. Find us online on Facebook by searching The Everglade Chronicles or at Everglade Chronicles on Instagram. I appreciate your support. If you're interested in purchasing any of the Everglade Chronicles novels, you can find them exclusively on Amazon. Thank you and see you next week.